Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge, a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services focusing on the Port of Anchorage and the major commercial participants in the Cook Inlet region, providing customers with marine services specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting tonight's show. Up on the advisory, or the watch warning advisory chart here, there's a winter weather advisory out for the St. Lawrence Island area and the Bering Sea coast, the coast of the Bering Strait here in the shaded areas there. That's for blowing snow, reducing visibilities to a half mile at times as winds been gusting 50 miles an hour out there, and that's out until 8 p.m. and then conditions will improve when the winds subside later this evening. And moving on to the breakup map of the Alaska rivers, everywhere pretty much in a stationary status quo here, but the South Fork of the Kuskokwim River there at Nikolai, they reported some open ice there, so starting to get rolling in that area, at least to a certain extent, but everywhere else is wait a few more days or a couple of more weeks. On to the satellite imagery, the Western Pacific here. This is the next storm that'll be moving eastward and then curving up and bringing gale force winds into Kodiak Island, possible storm force winds as well Tuesday night, tomorrow night, and then that'll push eastward and bring some gales to the southeast coast on Wednesday, while this system here will be pushing in and bringing some rain and wind over the far western, actually around Shemya tomorrow afternoon, and then that front will be driving eastward on Wednesday in toward the eastern Aleutians. And putting that in motion again, this is taking a turn to the northeast here, and again we'll be pushing up toward southern Kodiak Island actually as early as tomorrow afternoon with some rain, and the winds coming in late tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow evening. On the satellite here, this is the band here coming across. It's bringing the snow to the Kenai Peninsula and northern Cook Inlet areas this afternoon. Main front up here kind of broken up and diffuse as it moves into western Canada there. Then a couple more bands, a couple more troughs, another band right through here, and a couple more troughs out to the west there, bringing continuous rain. This band here giving continuous rain to the southeast coast throughout the day today, all the way back in toward Yakutat. Then it gets more showery along the North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Cordova reporting showers, and then the steady precipitation here over northern Cook Inlet will actually eventually here get down in the drier air, comes northward. It'll get a little more showery tonight, like around Kodiak Island, some showers, and low pressure here over the eastern Bering Sea or the northeast Bering, giving snow and blowing snow to the southwest coast, Kuskokwim, Yukon Delta areas there. Some pretty good winds, gusted to 46 miles an hour at Cape Newenham, and Bethel had gusts up to about 40 miles an hour today, and then the gust of 50 miles an hour there at Tin City, that creating the snow and blowing snow through the Bering Strait down to a lesser extent at St. Lawrence Island. Up to the north, the Arctic coast, light winds, hair trigger here on the map advancer, but light winds continue through tonight here up along the North Gulf Coast. There is a chance of some increasing snow on the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope areas here in conjunction with this low up in this area there. And otherwise scattered snow showers here down through the interior, snow changing to snow showers and then tapering off here over northern Cook Inlet during the evening hours. Look for some scattered rain and snow showers along the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, down to Kodiak Island, and the rain changing to showers here this evening and then tapering off, just some few scattered showers here over the Panhandle back up toward Yakutat and out to the west. This low pressure area here southeast of St. Lawrence Island, that's going to keep gusty winds, snow, blowing snow, occasionally reducing visibilities to a mile here across the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and that same pattern also forecast for the Pribilofs. At times, the gusty winds reducing visibilities down to a mile or less, but that'll improve this evening and later on tonight. You can see the gradient really slackening here, so the winds out there over the Pribilof should be coming down. Not much in the way of any wind here over the Alaska Peninsula, and then some brisk northwesterlies, 15 to 20 miles an hour out over the western central Aleutians, but not a lot of weather going on with that, just some clouds. And then looking at the forecast for tomorrow, still looking at kind of showery here across the southeast coast. Same thing for the North Gulf Coast, mostly cloudy, scattered to widely scattered showers in the area. Not a bad day. We'll see some sunshine here for Cook Inlet, south central Alaska, up into the Copper River Basin. Staying mostly dry here over the eastern interior, 40-mile country up to the upper Yukon Valley. Actually, most of the Tanana Valley as well. Just some variable clouds, mostly sunny skies. Risk of an isolated snow shower or two, rain or snow shower up here over the upper Yukon Valley. Better chance back here to the west where there's more moisture in that low now right over St. Lawrence Island. So occasional snow or snow showers there with light variable winds. Pretty light winds here across the Bering Sea. This is really weakening now. And then look for periods of snow here across the North Slope out to the Arctic coast. And some of that could be blowing and drifting around a little bit, but not much in the way of wind with that low center up there, at least the way it looks at this point in time. But that area of snow will be shifting southward and probably right up to the north slopes of the Brooks Range, and then better conditions to the south, as I mentioned. Then the next system out to the west, spreading gale force winds and rain into the Shimei-Attu area, but high pressure for less wind under the gales, possibly even less than small craft advisories here through the central Aleutians for tomorrow. Risk of some rain and snow showers there, northwest winds of 10 to 20 miles per hour for the eastern Aleutians. And then the outlook for Wednesday, that front pushes eastward and brings gale force winds into the Adak-Atka area tomorrow night, early on Wednesday, and by afternoon the front should be past Atka and the wind and rain spreading into the Fox Islands here. Same thing for the Pribilofs. Look for increasing south to southeast winds with a snow changing to rain type of condition out there with south winds possibly as high as 35 knots, and then showers and windy conditions back to the west towards Attu. And then some scattered snow showers up here over the Seward Peninsula and the west central interior areas, but pretty good. Just mostly sunny day here for south central Alaska, as well as just about all of the eastern and central interior. Fair amount of sunshine for the Copper River Basin. Isolated showers developing over the mountainous terrain, the Alaska Range, Talkeetnas, and then over the Kenai Peninsula. Same thing for Kodiak Island, but just widely scattered isolated showers. This storm now taking a turn to the east, so after the possible storm force winds it brings to Kodiak Island tomorrow night, this front will be pushing eastward. Look for gales here all along the southeast coast are in the forecast. Southeasterlies 35 knots there from Dixon Entrance on up the coastline, taking more of an easterly direction along the north coast. And chances of rain increasing along the central and south coast first. Just look for an increase in the clouds farther to the east and on up to the north toward Juneau and Haines and those areas there. Not a bad day here along the North Gulf Coast as well after the rain of the last few days dry out for Yakutat, Cordova, Prince William Sound. Temperatures across the Panhandle today mostly in the mid to upper 40s, 49 at Skagway, 45 Sitka, and a 46-degree reading down at Klawock with 48 at Petersburg. 40 degrees, moderate rain falling in Yakutat today, 43 degrees over at Cordova. Valdez at 37, that same reading reported at Northway where they had rain and snow today at observation time, 37 with rain, 42 at Gulkana. Delta had 47, Fairbanks at 50, 48 at Fort Yukon, 46 over at Bettles with 40-degree reading there at Tanana, up to the north of the Brooks Range, Anatuvik mid-30s, Arctic Village at 39, and up above the freeze point there at Kaktovik with 33 degrees, Barrow at 22, Point Lay 35 degrees, and Cape Lisburne at 37. Back into the mid to upper 20s over the northwest, Noatak, Selawik Valleys, Kotzebue at 25, 21 there at Tin City with those gusty winds, 19 Nome, and that's McGrath. They had some snow earlier with 31 degrees. Mid-30s here down to the south at Sleep Mute. Bethel, though, with some blowing snow and gusty winds at 32 degrees, and mostly in the lower to mid-20s out along the coast. Pribilof's here right near the freeze point at 4 o'clock this afternoon. St. Paul, 32 degrees. St. George, 33. And there's a 34 at Atka, 37 at Adak, while Shemya had 35. Unalaska, 34 degrees and 40 degrees at Cold Bay. For the lows tonight, single numbers and teens here for the Arctic coast and North Slope areas, south of the mountains, mid-20s across the upper Yukon Valley to into the Tanana Valley, and kind of upper 20s to lower 30s here across south central Alaska, mid to upper 30s for the Panhandle, lower 40s down to the south, and out to the west, lows in the Aleutians right near the freeze point, into the mid-20s for the Pribilofs, mid-20s also, or lower 20s here over the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and down into the teens for St. Lawrence Island and the Seward Peninsula. And for the highs tomorrow, mid to upper 20s here across the Bering Strait and the Seward Peninsula to St. Lawrence Island, while the Arctic coast, lower 20s, lower to mid-20s, warmest on the east side, a little cooler over the North Slope, and then markedly warmer where there's be more sunshine here south of the Brooks Range, mid to upper 40s over the Yukon Valley, and that extends down in the central Tanana Valley, down to about Minchumina there. We're forecasting a high of 45. Mid to upper 40s here for south central Alaska, a little cooler over the Copper River Basin, a little more elevation there, and upper 40s to maybe lower 50s here across the southeast coast. Flying weather looks good. Look for VFR here all along the southeast coast, North Gulf Coast, south central Alaska, up to the Brooks Range. This area kind of expanding southward. Mostly the lowest conditions will be on the northern slopes. There are some IFR. IFR also likely along the eastern Arctic coast. Better conditions to the west. Marginal VFR from the central Bering Strait down to St. Lawrence Island, and areas of marginal VFR here down the southwest coast. Inland areas in the morning hours, not tending to back out to the west during the afternoon. Then areas of marginal VFR across the Bering Sea, either side of the Pribilofs here. Then the IFR coming in with that next system that comes in from the west, and the IFR coming northward. Probably not quite reaching Sitkinak by tomorrow afternoon, but definitely tomorrow night this will wrap right up into the area and then tend to pull off to the east late tomorrow night and during the day on Wednesday. Passes, Anaktuvik, VFR becoming marginal in the lowest conditions. Possible IFR in the northern approach of Anaktuvik. Same forecast for Adigan, VFR, and then becoming marginal VFR. Possible IFR developing on the northern entrance, VFR to the south. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional just VFR, not occasional, will be VFR the entire day, as will be rainy VFR. Windy VFR. Either approach, Isabel, same story, VFR conditions, north and south entrances. Mentasta be wide open. And for Tanita, VFR conditions tomorrow, east and west. Portage, VFR for a change there on both entrances. And Chilkoot and White, another VFR day. And at the freezing levels, that upper trough now swinging through, so the steady rain becoming more showery as the front pushes off into western Canada there, and you get into the drier air to the west pushing in, and we've got cool air all the way out to the west at the surface late tonight, early tomorrow morning, still near or just south of the Pribilofs here, then right across northern Bristol Bay, up across the Kenai Peninsula and hugging the coastline, something like this, so 2,000 feet farther to the south. Icing threats with the system coming into the west, look mostly below 12,000 feet of the rime variety of icing there, and then with the moisture streaming northward, look for some increasing threats of icing here coming into Kodiak Island. Again, mostly during the mid and later afternoon hours below 11,000 feet. The heavier stuff stays to the south until tomorrow night and Wednesday. And otherwise, there's some hit and miss icing possibilities here across southern Alaska, and then icing of the rime variety, possibly mixed up here to the North Slope and the eastern Arctic coast, down to about the Brooks Range. And the upper level wind flow chart, upper low here over the northern Bering Sea, and this trough associated with that system coming eastward. They'll be swinging up toward Kodiak tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. And then this trough slowly edging its way eastward. Got a very sharp ridge here over western North America, but it's gradually edging eastward. And so that's going to allow the rain to change the showers and taper off, but probably won't end completely, as I mentioned there, across the southeast coast. 9,000-foot winds, southeasterlies or south-southeasterlies, strongest winds staying to the south through tomorrow afternoon here, but up to 25 knots there for Kodiak Island, and still have kind of a breezy condition here, that low near St. Lawrence Island, south-southeast 20 to 25, and 125-knot wind there right over the Koyukuk Valley, and then taking off to the northeast there at 35 knots. Lighter winds behind that low, and high pressure, just 15-knot westerlies there for the central Aleutians, but those picking up markedly as you head out towards Shimian and Attu. High pressure here over the eastern Gulf of Alaska, so northwesterlies at about 25 there along and just off the coast of the Panhandle. That same pattern at 3,000 feet as well, 20 to 25-knot winds. High pressure right up along the coastline, and southerlies 25 for Kodiak, the 50-knot winds still to the south until tomorrow night, and low pressure there near St. Lawrence Island, still kind of windy across the Yukon Delta, 25 knots, but conditions will be better than they were today, and that low up off the eastern Arctic coast, expected to bring the snow into that area, south to southwest, or west to southwest, 25 to 35 knots, and the winds on the increase way out west. Turbulence be increasing too, way out there towards Shimian and Attu, but the remainder of the Aleutians looking pretty good, as well as the Bering Sea. And then late in the afternoon, moderate shock, possibly reaching southern Kodiak Island by late afternoon. Light to isolated moderate up across Kamishak Bay to say Iliamna. And then mostly mechanical turbulence early on, but that'll be shifting eastward here out of the southeast coast. And after the break, I'll be back after hangar flying with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaskan Public Media and Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. This evening, our guest is Dean Eichholz, a well-respected CFI, DPE, and he's also the treasurer of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. Dean came to Alaska in 1983 and became a DPE in 1987. Dean is on our program today primarily to talk about the upcoming seaplane seminar in Anchorage. Dean has managed this program, been the organizer for it for many years, and has done a great job. And we're looking forward to the program this year. Dean, welcome back.
Thank you.
Let's get right to the details. When, where, and what's the program?
Well, it's going to be on April 25th, and it's going to be this year at the Lusac Library there in Anchorage at the Assembly Chambers. And it's going to run from 8 in the morning, the doors will open, and speakers will start at 8:30 and run till 4 in the afternoon.
Good. Well, one thing to keep in mind, folks, if you're used to going to the OAS hangar, we are moving, and the reason we're doing that is because we've had some difficulties with the sound at the OAS hangar, and also the Lusac Library, the Assembly Chambers, really has worked well. We did our fall seminar there, and the acoustics are good, and there's plenty of places there's plenty of room. Can you talk a little bit about the agenda?
Well, the agenda, we're starting off in the morning, and we're going to have a maintenance panel. We have a couple folks in the maintenance area that can provide good information about getting the airplane ready for springtime flying. After that, I was going to run a little bit of a question and answer to the audience there of seeing if the pilots are ready for that, whether they could pass a seaplane check ride. And we have, in the afternoon, we're going to have also a scenario that we're going to run that Tom George and I will be the pilots, and we're going to be taking a little trip from the Kenai Peninsula on the floats and going up into the Kenai Mountains and on a flight, and what could possibly go wrong with that.
We know something.
And after that, then of course we have, if things did go wrong, search and rescue, and we have a couple folks from the U.S. Coast Guard kind of tell us about the perspective of what happens from their point of view of coming after us if something didn't go well.
Well, I want to comment about a couple things. One is we've had Rob Carty on before from the Rescue Coordination Center, and the Coast Guard will be a nice addition to that. The other thing is I want to tip my hat to Roger Motzko, who has helped put these scenarios together. And if you haven't seen one of these scenarios, ladies and gentlemen. They're really a lot of fun. It's interactive. Everybody gets a clicker. Everybody gets to vote when it's decision time. And this will be, I think, our third, and I think you'll really enjoy it. Who's paying for all this?
Well, we work on putting it all together. It's free to the public to come. We encourage donations for that, but we have several sponsors that help on door prizes at the event as well. But for if you're wondering if it's going to cost you for the day, nope, show up. And one of the big bonuses that usually is a big draw is my wife, Patty, will be making about 40 dozen cookies again. And so if nothing else, and you want to come for cookies and coffee, you might want to catch a little bit of the seminar.
I would say, a little bit self-serving here for the Safety Foundation, these seminars are not free for us. There are expenses in renting the chambers, there are expenses involved. So what I would encourage you is, if you're not a member of the Safety Foundation, please join, and you can go to our website, www.aasfonline.org. It's only $35 a year, but it really helps us pay for things like this seminar. What about lunch?
Lunch, we have some food trucks that'll be showing up out there outside the assembly chambers around lunchtime. So you have your choice of different types of meals that you may want to enjoy. If you haven't ever eaten at one of the food trucks in Anchorage, there's some very good food that's available there. So you don't have to go anywhere for the day to run any place for lunch, and stay there. And it's great to meet old friends and meet new ones there at the chamber there. So
well, it's kind of a rite of spring. So ladies and gentlemen, reminder, it's April 25th, which is a Saturday. Try to get there about 8 o'clock, and it's at the Assembly Chambers, which is in the Lusac Library in Anchorage. And like Dean said, it's a great time to start thinking about summer flying, meeting some of your old friends, and learning some good safety techniques. So Dean, thanks for putting that together, and thanks for being on the program.
okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, with high pressure building across the Northeast Pacific and the Eastern Gulf through here, northwest winds 20 knots all along the coastline, more westerly up here on the north side, and seas running 8 to 10 feet. Over the inside waters, variable to west or north here for the central areas at 20 knots, seas 4 to 5 feet. Northwest at 20 down over the southern inside waters, Clarence Strait. Northern Lynn Canal, winds south at 15 with 3-foot seas tomorrow afternoon. Then for Wednesday, with that next front coming across, look for gale force winds to increase from the southeast here along the south coast and the east up to the northern areas, but all coming up, forecast to come up to 35 knots, and those seas building 12 to 13 feet. Clarence Strait, southeast winds at 30 knots with 6-foot seas in the forecast. Up to the north, little higher pressure over the Yukon, northerlies 15 to 20 knots for northern Lynn Canal, and actually the central inside waters. And for Cook Inlet, southeast 10 for pretty light north of the Forelands, but southerlies at about 20 knots south of the Forelands. Southeast winds becoming southeast, picking up a little bit here across the Barren Islands into Kamishak Bay at about 20 knots, 25-knot winds there along the east side of Kodiak Island. Otherwise, southerlies at 20 knots from the North Gulf Coast, taking more of a southeast direction there across Prince William Sound, and 5 knots lighter. Then for Wednesday, after the possible storms tomorrow night, northeast 35 for the east side of Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait northeast 30 knots. That same wind pattern will extend up across Kamishak Bay with easterlies at 35 here. So gale force winds from the Barren Islands and all on the North Gulf Coast under gale warnings for Wednesday. Northeast at 20 with 4-foot seas for Prince William Sound, and northeast at 15 over the northern Cook Inlet areas, but small craft advisories south of the Forelands. And for Bristol Bay, tomorrow southeast at 15, southeast 25 here, southwest of Kodiak Island, northwest 15 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, but small craft advisories here on the Pacific side for 25-knot winds and 8-foot seas. And then for Wednesday, westerlies at 15 for Bristol Bay. Northerlies 25. In fact, early in the day, those could be gales here, but coming down to 25 knots. And then late in the afternoon, dropping under small craft advisory levels there southwest of Kodiak Island. Southeast winds 30 knots on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, Pacific side southwest or south-southwest at about 25 with 12-foot seas. Over the Aleutians, the Fox Islands, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots tomorrow. And westerlies for Adak and Atka 15 to 20 knots. And then the gales coming into the far western areas from the south at 35. And then that'll push eastward. And we've got gales here for the Fox Islands from the south-southwest, 35 to 40 knots. Small craft advisories across Adak and Atka. Then back into the gales here, 35 to 40 knot winds out over the western Aleutians. And for the southwest coast, not too bad. Southwest 10 to 15 knots under low pressure, weak low pressure over at St. Lawrence Island. Variable winds at 10 or less, and westerlies maybe at 10 knots there for the waters around St. Matthew Island. And the Pribilofs, westerlies at 15. Then those gales come in on Wednesday there to the Pribilofs, east-southeasterlies 35 with 13-foot seas. South 20 here for the coast. Light winds continue for St. Lawrence Island. Up along the Arctic coast here, north to northwest on the west side and central coast, all at 15 knots with easterlies at 20 knots here from Wales to Cape Thompson, and east to northeast at 15 for the east side. Then they'll swing around to the west, but stay light just about everywhere here, southeast on the western areas and then west to southwest over toward Demarcation Point. For tonight, again, the snow changes over to showers and ends here for northern Cook Inlet and south central Alaska, and the rain changes to showers, starts to taper off over the southeast coast, but still a winter weather advisory out until 8 p.m. for the Bering Strait coast. That'll end after 8 p.m. with the winds lightening up. Not much gradient anymore up here, so lighter winds, but wind and rain streaming into Kodiak Island, low pressure and snow up along the north slope, and there's that next system pushing eastward to about that position Wednesday afternoon. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.